August 1944, Paris, the city of light, stands on the edge of annihilation. Adolf Hitler, furious and desperate, orders his general to destroy every bridge, monument, and landmark, Notre Dame, the Louvre, the Eiffel Tower, everything. The man in charge, General Dietrich von Choltitz, known as the wrecker of cities, he has a choice: obey Hitler and burn Paris to the ground, or defy orders and risk everything. The streets are alive with rebellion. The Allies are advancing, and a quiet neutral diplomat, Raoul Nordling, offers a lifeline. But time is slipping fast. Every second counts. One wrong move, and Paris could vanish forever. Will one man's conscience save the city, or will it burn? Watch the full story to uncover how Paris survived Hitler's fury and the shocking decision that changed history forever. Paris, August 23, 1944. The city lay under a tense silence, broken only by distant gunfire echoing from the outskirts. Smoke curled from scattered barricades erected by the French resistance, a silent testament to a city refusing to bow under occupation. From a luxurious yet claustrophobic bunker far to the east, Adolf Hitler seethed. Maps and photographs littered his desk, each marking a city under threat, each a symbol of his fading empire. His eyes fixed on Paris, the jewel of Europe, a city whose streets had tasted German boots for 4 long years. Destroy it, he barked, his voice cracking with rage. Every street, every bridge, every monument. If Paris falls to the Allies, it will burn to the ground. Notre Dame, the Louvre, the Eiffel Tower, nothing must survive. This city will be a graveyard, a lesson to those who dare oppose the Reich. Far away in the heart of Paris, a man listened to orders that would haunt history. General Dietrich von Choltitz, the city's new military governor, stared out from a high vantage point over the Seine. Known on the Eastern Front as the wrecker of cities, von Choltitz had reduced entire towns to rubble, leaving no stone unturned in his scorched earth campaigns. Now, Hitler's commands demanded the impossible: to annihilate one of the world's most iconic capitals. Von Choltitz felt the weight of history pressing down on him. In his hands, explosives were ready, tons of dynamite, meticulously placed across bridges, key government buildings, and monumental landmarks. A single order, a single flick of a switch, and Paris could vanish into flames. Yet as he gazed over the city from Montmartre, the rooftops glittering under the late summer sun, doubt gnawed at him. The narrow streets and ancient bridges, the spires of Notre Dame catching the light like molten gold, the Louvre standing silent and proud, these were treasures beyond mere military strategy. Could he truly destroy them, knowing the people who lived among these streets would pay the price? Von Choltitz's thoughts flickered back to the Eastern Front. He had followed orders without question, reducing cities to ashes, watching his men fall, watching civilians flee or die. Duty had been his god, obedience his shield. But Paris was different. Here, he faced not just military logic, but a choice that would echo through time. Inside his office, his second-in-command, Colonel Hans J., shifted uneasily. "Sir," he said quietly, "this order, it is madness. Even the Reich cannot expect us to." Von Choltitz held up a hand, silencing him. The city below seemed alive, resisting, daring him to destroy it. He weighed his options. Compliance meant infamy and unthinkable destruction. Defiance meant risking his life, defying Hitler himself. As evening fell over Paris, a coded phone call was made, an intricate ruse designed to mask his true intentions. Von Choltitz reported progress on the demolitions, describing explosions that never happened, while inside, he planned the city's survival. Each lie he whispered into the receiver was a step toward salvation. The streets below were stirring. French police were striking, barricades were rising, and whispers of uprising drifted through the air. Von Choltitz knew time was slipping. Every hour delayed his obedience, yet brought him closer to a moment where he might save Paris from the abyss. And somewhere, in the shadows, a neutral observer watched. Raoul Nordling, the Swedish consul, understood the gravity of the situation. The fate of Paris, its bridges, cathedrals, and soul rested precariously between an obedient soldier and a madman's command. The die was cast. One city, caught between vengeance and mercy, waited. One man, Dietrich von Choltitz, faced a decision that would define history. Uprising in the streets. The night in Paris was restless. Barricades lined narrow streets, lit by flickering lanterns and the orange glow of smoldering fires. The city's pulse was defiant, a heartbeat of resistance against years of occupation. Word of impending liberation had spread among Parisians, but so had fear. Rumor swirled that the German governor had orders to destroy everything if the Allies arrived. Every citizen, from cobbler to banker, knew the fragile line between life and death was in the hands of one man. By August 9th, von Choltitz had arrived in the city. The German garrison, numbering around 20,000, was poorly equipped and demoralized. Many were conscripts, soldiers unprepared for urban warfare, and caught between fear of the resistance and loyalty to the Reich. Paris, he quickly realized, was not a fortress, it was a tinderbox. The streets trembled with a new energy. Police officers went on strike, refusing to obey their German overlords. The French resistance, small groups of partisans, armed with courage rather than heavy weapons, began seizing key locations, communication hubs, armories, and bridges. Rumors of a communist-led uprising circulated, fueling both hope and tension. Von Choltitz observed the city from his office, the Seine reflecting the last rays of sunlight. He saw citizens climbing onto rooftops, shouting, waving flags, and dismantling barricades in defiance of the occupiers. And yet, amid the chaos, he felt a strange calm. The city seemed alive, breathing, daring him to follow Hitler's orders. Into this storm stepped Raoul Nordling, the Swedish consul general. Neutral, diplomatic, and respected, Nordling had long been a silent witness to Paris under occupation. Now he approached von Choltitz, understanding the precarious balance. He walked into the governor's office without fanfare, carrying the quiet authority of someone who could mediate between life and destruction. "General," Nordling began, his tone measured, "the city suffers, and so do its people. You hold their fate in your hands. Is there truly no other path?" Von Choltitz, tense but composed, regarded him. "The Führer's orders are clear," he said. "If Paris falls, the city is to be erased. Bridges, monuments, everything. You understand what that means?" "I understand," Nordling replied. "And I also understand that destruction is not inevitable. The Allies advance quickly. The resistance is ready. Perhaps there is a way to prevent catastrophe without spilling more blood." It was the first time in weeks that von Choltitz considered an alternative. He remembered the faces of the Parisians in the streets, the spires of Notre Dame, the elegant silhouette of the Eiffel Tower against the horizon. Memories of past campaigns haunted him, cities reduced to rubble, civilians fleeing in terror, and he realized that obedience had led only to death. Could defiance be possible here? Meanwhile, the French resistance grew bolder. Street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood, they struck German positions, sabotaged communications, and rallied citizens to their cause. Reports of German officers hesitating filtered through the network. Paris was alive with whispers. The city might survive if courage held firm. Von Choltitz convened with his second-in-command, Colonel Hans J. In the dim light of his office. "We cannot hold this city militarily," von Choltitz admitted, "and yet to destroy it would make us murderers of history." Colonel Hans nodded slowly. "Then perhaps we must stall, buy time, lie to Berlin, make them believe we follow orders while protecting the city." The plan, precarious and dangerous, took shape. Von Choltitz began sending coded messages, reporting progress on the demolitions that never existed. Explosives were in place, yet untouched. Bridges, monuments, and government buildings waited, their fate suspended in a tension that could snap at any moment. Through Nordling's mediation, messages were sent to the Allies, signaling willingness to surrender, but only if they acted swiftly. Every hour that passed brought both hope and danger. One misstep, one misinterpreted message, and the city could burn. The streets of Paris continued to roar with defiance. Citizens and partisans, unaware of the precarious negotiations above them, fought with the energy of desperation and hope. The city itself seemed to whisper to von Choltitz, "Do not betray us. Do not destroy what we hold dear." As dawn approached, a fragile silence settled over the city. Von Choltitz walked to a window, gazing at the bridges spanning the Seine, the rooftops, the monuments, the countdown to destruction. August the 24th, 1944. Dawn broke over Paris like a fragile promise, soft light filtering through smoke-stained skies. The city was restless. Every street corner seemed alive with defiance. Barricades still held, and the echoes of gunfire reminded the Germans that they were not in control. Yet high above the streets, in his office overlooking the Seine, General Dietrich von Choltitz faced the most critical decision of his life. The Allies were advancing. The French 2nd Armored Division, under the insistence of Charles de Gaulle, was moving toward the city, and the reality was clear. Paris would soon be liberated. Von Choltitz knew that if Hitler discovered any hesitation, the consequences would be swift and deadly. Yet the thought of obeying those orders of igniting explosives that could flatten centuries of history gnawed at him. Inside the governor's office, von Choltitz and Colonel Hans J. studied maps and communications. "The Allies are moving faster than expected," Hans whispered. "If we wait too long, we risk being surrounded. If we act, the city dies." Von Choltitz's hand hovered over the phone, the instrument that could summon Berlin's wrath. Instead, he picked up the receiver and reported progress. Demolitions proceeding as ordered, bridges prepared, explosives set. Every word was a lie, each carefully chosen to maintain the illusion of obedience while preserving Paris. Meanwhile, Raoul Nordling worked tirelessly as a mediator. He moved between German officers, French resistance leaders, and Allied contacts, using his neutrality as leverage. He appealed to von Choltitz's conscience with quiet, persuasive reasoning. "Paris is more than buildings, General," he said softly. "It is the heart of a nation. Spare it, and you will be remembered differently than if you obey blindly." Von Choltitz remained silent, staring out at the city he had been ordered to destroy. The Seine sparkled under the early morning sun, the bridges standing proudly. Notre Dame's towers rose like sentinels, untouched. Every moment of hesitation was dangerous, yet necessary. Outside, the resistance intensified its efforts. Street by street, neighborhoods erupted in revolt. Improvised barricades, Molotov cocktails, and daring attacks slowed the German troops. The city seemed to resist, almost consciously, as if urging its occupiers to spare it. Citizens who could escape took to the rooftops, waving flags, shouting encouragement, and guiding the resistance. Von Choltitz realized that military defense of Paris was impossible. His garrison lacked the strength, cohesion, and resources to fight the Allies effectively. Yet the thought of compliance with Hitler's scorched earth order weighed heavily on him. Could he find a middle path, one that would save lives and history without openly defying the Führer? In the evening, a critical decision crystallized. Von Choltitz authorized Nordling to contact the Allies, signaling a willingness to surrender if the advance could be swift and orderly. Nordling, understanding the urgency, relayed the message carefully. "The city may be spared if your forces move quickly. Delay, and history will be lost." The tension in Paris reached a fever pitch. German soldiers were nervous, unsure whether to obey or resist. The resistance fighters pressed on, sensing victory but unaware of the fragile negotiations, keeping the city intact. Every moment counted, every decision weighed on von Choltitz like a leaden weight. As night fell, von Choltitz walked along the parapet of his office. Gazing at the city, he thought of his past, the devastation he had caused on the Eastern Front, the lives lost, the cities destroyed. Could one man truly change the course of history? Could he defy Hitler without paying the ultimate price? The answer, he realized, lay in deception, courage, and careful timing. By pretending to comply, reporting fictitious progress, and stalling, he could buy Paris a few more hours that might determine whether the city survived or perished. Somewhere in the shadows, Nordling waited. In the streets below, the resistance prepared for the final push. And beyond the horizon, the Allies drew closer, unaware of the delicate thread holding the fate of Paris. The countdown had begun. Every hour brought the city closer to liberation or destruction, and in the mind of von Choltitz, the battle between duty and conscience raged fiercely, the fall that never came. August 25th, 1944, Paris awoke to a tense electric dawn. The streets, once quiet under occupation, now throbbed with anticipation. Barricades bristled along the boulevards. Flags waved defiantly from rooftops, and the echoes of distant Allied tanks rumbled like the heartbeat of liberation. For the people of Paris, hope was tangible, almost as heavy as the fear that their city might burn before freedom arrived. Inside the German headquarters, General Dietrich von Choltitz moved with a careful, measured pace. The explosives he had so meticulously planted lay untouched, a deadly potential waiting silently. Every bridge across the Seine, every government building, every monument, the Arc de Triomphe, the Louvre, Notre Dame, the Eiffel Tower, could be reduced to rubble with a single command. And yet he hesitated, torn between loyalty to Hitler and a profound recognition of the beauty and history before him. Colonel Hans J. approached cautiously. "The Allies are nearly here, sir. Time is short. Orders from Berlin will come soon, and you know what they demand." Von Choltitz nodded. "Yes," he whispered, staring out over the city. "And yet, to obey would be unforgivable. I will not turn Paris into a graveyard." At that moment, Raoul Nordling arrived, moving through the tense corridors with his characteristic calm. "General," he said softly, "the people below and the Allies beyond, they wait for your decision. You can act without spilling blood. The surrender must be orderly. Make it swift, or the city risks everything." Von Choltitz took a deep breath. The weight of history pressed on him like a stone. Every decision he made now would be remembered, for better or worse. Every moment he delayed could save lives, or it could doom the city entirely. The German garrison, already demoralized by the uprising and the relentless pressure from the resistance, was on the verge of collapse. Soldiers whispered among themselves, some questioning orders, others hoping for surrender. Von Choltitz sensed the fragile thread that held control. One wrong move, one panicked officer, and Paris could erupt into chaos. As Allied forces, led by the French 2nd Armored Division, approached the city center, Von Choltitz made his move. He issued instructions to halt any demolition. Explosives remained in place, untouched, while German troops were ordered to maintain calm and avoid confrontation. Simultaneously, Nordling communicated with the Allies, coordinating a peaceful entry into Paris. On the streets, resistance fighters watched the Germans hesitate. Their courage and patience had paid off. The city had not been destroyed despite the looming threat. Civilians cautiously ventured out from their hiding places, stepping over barricades and debris, eyes wide with disbelief and relief. By mid-morning, Allied tanks rolled into the city, greeted by cheering crowds. French officers, waving flags, guided the soldiers through the streets. Von Choltitz, fully aware of the implications, arranged a formal surrender. He met Lieutenant Henri Kerr, a young French officer, in a quiet courtyard, and handed over the city without a fight. Bridges remained intact. Monuments stood proud. Explosives lay dormant, forgotten in the shadows. News of the surrender reached Hitler's bunker. Fury and disbelief erupted from Berlin, but von Choltitz was already beyond reach. He had chosen prudence, morality, and perhaps even conscience over blind obedience. In that decisive moment, Paris had been spared. As the city erupted in celebration, the streets overflowing with jubilant Parisians, von Choltitz walked among his officers, quiet, almost anonymous. History would remember this day not only for liberation, but for the near catastrophe that had been averted by one man's courage or pragmatism, depending on whom you asked. The city, scarred by years of occupation, yet standing proud, had survived Hitler's fury. The Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame, and the Arc de Triomphe bore witness to a choice that defied destruction. Above all, The people of Paris had reclaimed their city, their culture, and their hope. Yet behind the celebrations, a quiet question lingered. Why had von Choltitz truly chosen to spare Paris? Was it conscience, pragmatism, admiration for beauty, or a combination of all three? The answer remained his alone, a secret held by a man who had danced with history and lived to tell the tale. For Paris, August 25th was more than liberation. It was a day of survival, of resilience, and of a city refusing to bow to destruction. The countdown had ended, and the fall that everyone feared never came. Legacy and shadows. Paris was alive again. The streets buzzed with laughter, music, and the triumphant cries of a liberated city. Children ran through avenues once barricaded, their voices carrying over rooftops that had watched in silent fear for years. Cafes spilled over with people raising glasses to freedom, and the Seine glimmered beneath the morning sun, as if celebrating the city's survival. And yet, behind the jubilation, a quieter story unfolded. General Dietrich von Choltitz, the man who had held Paris's fate in his hands, now walked through the city like a ghost among the living. Soldiers of the French resistance eyed him cautiously. Citizens whispered, unsure whether to regard him as a savior or a relic of occupation. For von Choltitz, relief mingled uneasily with memory of the Eastern Front, the devastation he had wrought, the orders from Hitler, and the decision that had spared Paris. In the immediate aftermath, von Choltitz was taken into Allied custody. He spent 3 years detained, questioned about his actions, his motives, and his knowledge of war crimes committed elsewhere. Some saw his surrender as a pragmatic move, a soldier recognizing a lost cause, a man avoiding unnecessary bloodshed. Others hailed him as a hero, a man who, against orders, saved one of the world's most treasured cities. Von Choltitz later reflected on those days in memoirs. He cited 3 reasons for sparing Paris: the futility of destruction in the face of overwhelming Allied forces, his personal admiration for the city's cultural beauty, and the recognition that Hitler's orders were insane. But historians have debated these claims. Some argue he exaggerated his moral courage to cleanse his reputation, pointing to his brutal record on the Eastern Front and complicity in atrocities. Others suggest that a mix of pragmatism and conscience shaped his choice, that even in obedience, a man could still find a way to protect what mattered most. The French, too, had complex feelings about his role. Official narratives often emphasized the heroism of the resistance, downplaying the German officer who had, in his own way, preserved the city. Yet many Parisians, especially those who had lived through the fear of demolition, remembered von Choltitz with quiet gratitude. His surrender had prevented bridges from collapsing, monuments from crumbling, and centuries of history from being reduced to rubble. The story of Paris in August 1944 would later inspire films, books, and countless retellings. Is Paris Burning dramatized the tension and suspense, portraying von Choltitz as a conflicted officer facing the ultimate moral choice. Diplomacy revisited the delicate negotiations with Raoul Nordling, emphasizing the human elements that had influenced decisions in those critical hours. Through art and narrative, the world remembered not only the courage of Parisians, but also the fragile mercy extended by a German general. Von Choltitz died in 1966. His funeral, attended by French officers and members of his own family, reflected a man caught between history's judgment and human ambiguity. To some, he was a savior; to others, a pragmatist whose conscience had, in a rare moment, coincided with humanity. The debate over his true motivations continues, a reminder that history is rarely black and white. As for Paris, the city endured. Its bridges still spanned the Seine, its cathedrals and monuments still pierced the sky, and its streets remained filled with life, laughter, and culture. The scars of occupation faded over time, but the memory of those tense days in August of a city poised between destruction and survival lingered in collective consciousness. History, in the end, preserves moments of choice, and in August 1944, one man's hesitation, his courage, or perhaps his pragmatism, allowed a city to breathe, to stand, and to live. Paris had faced the brink of ruin and emerged intact, a testament to resilience, negotiation, and the complex shades of human morality. Somewhere, in the quiet corners of the city, one can still feel the weight of those days, the whispers of barricades, the tension of explosives that never went off, and the fragile thread of life that a single decision had held. Paris survived, not merely by arms or luck, but because for a moment history bent toward mercy. And so, the City of Light continued to shine, a living monument to both human courage and the choices that shape our world. Paris survived, but how? Was it courage, conscience, or sheer luck that saved the City of Light from total destruction? One man held the fate of a city in his hands, and history will never forget the day Paris teetered on the edge and didn't fall.